Good morning. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. Good morning. Good morning, loved ones. This morning is going to be interesting because my verses today were 2 Thessalonians 1, 2 Thessalonians 1, verse 3. But, I'm sorry, I've got a little bit of a headache. But I read all of 1 and 2, chapter 1 and 2. And I will tell you why. So, 2 Thessalonians, Paul is writing to the Thessalonians, the church he helped start or whatever. And there were some among them that had been deceived by like false teachers and things like that, that the end of days was the judgment days were already there. And so they stopped working. They stopped, doing all the things. And so he writes to them and he starts out by being really kind and thanking God for, like, he's not just coming down on all of them. He comes and he says that, he thanks God for them and for how much they've grown and their love for one another. And then he addresses it in chapter 2. And he basically is letting them know kind of why it's not the end of days. And he's like, God's going to come and he's going to repay his afflicted children, and judge those who don't believe in him, and all that, or that don't know God. And there are some things that are going to happen that will show you that this is not those days yet. And he tells them that, he talks about the Antichrist and how the Antichrist is going to seat himself on the throne in the temple in Jerusalem, and people are going to worship him and all this stuff. And he talks about all this stuff. And he talks about the restrainer and how these things haven't happened yet because there's a restrainer, and the restrainer is the Holy Spirit. And when God removes the restrainer, like when God removes the Holy Spirit from the world, he's not going to remove the Holy Spirit from his people. So when God removes the restrainer, like, his people go with him. And at that point, he gives the people up to themselves. And it says he gives them like a delusional influence. I don't know. My verse is weird. But he gives them up to themselves to believe false teachings and, worship wickedness. And that you were, in the end of that part, chapter 2, is like, you were called, you were chosen, you were called. Chosen is an interesting thing because there's people that believe, okay, well, God chose us, so he didn't choose other people. That's not true. God's all-knowing and all-powerful, and his ways are way above ours. But he knows the people that are going to choose him. He knows his kids, and his kids know the sound of his voice. He knows his children. And his children he has chosen and called to do good things. And he has chosen his babies. It's like a mutual. I don't know. God's above it all, but you're chosen. God chose you. He died for all. But sadly, not all are going to know God. Not all are going to love him. That's sad. But at some point, God delivers them up to themselves. And he says, okay, well, you don't want me. That's fine. I'm going to give you up to yourself. And so anyway, he's like, you've been called and chosen to do good things, to do good works. Like God's called you. Now, you can do any job you want. Like, I really think people walk around doing, I think as a church we do a disservice to Christians by making it sound like there's this magical calling and you have to figure it out, secret sauce. And I really believe God's already told you what your calling is. There's a million things in the world you can do as a job, not the same. But your calling is to love God, to worship God, and to love other people. You can do that in any job. You could literally do a million things, but you're called to worship God and to thank Him in the midst of all things, which, by the way, is what strips the enemy of his power, right? And even when you're afflicted, that you're like, God, thank you that you're with me. Thank you that you never leave me or forsake me. Thank you that nothing can strip you from your hand. Thank you that you walk with me even in the valley of the shadow of death. Like thanking God and loving other people, taking care of the orphan and the widow, living in peace at all possible, showing other people who don't know God how much He loves them. That's your calling. So you're welcome. And what was the last thing I had written down on my thing? You're called. You can do any job. I don't know. I don't remember what I've got a headache a little bit in the back of my skull. I get migraines. And so they start out like right there. And I need to go take something. So anyway, listen, there is going to be a time whether God calls you home, and He knows the number of days that we have, right? There's going to be a point where there are no more opportunities to know Him, to accept the gift He gave, to be restored to Him as His kid. Like, there's gonna be a day when there are no more opportunities for that. So don't get distracted by the shiny things in the world. I'm not saying some of those aren't good. I'm saying have perspective, because there's gonna be a day when your days are done and you either knew Him or you didn't. It's gonna be like, what did you do with my son? Because the thing is, God's perfect and He loves us, and He's like, my babies, how can I restore my babies? There's got to be a payment for that. You don't have to pay it because Jesus paid it for you. You understand? And whether God returns and He takes the restrainer and His children away, or your days are done, you only have so many opportunities. And if you already know God and you're already His kid, don't waste your days being lazy and distracted with the things of this world. When God takes you home and He sees you as His baby, you want Him to say, well done, baby. You know, you don't want Him to say, you're saved. I mean, there's a difference, because you only have so much opportunity. You only have so much life. And if you spend it not loving others and showing them who God is, and being forgiving and peaceful and merciful, and showing others just exactly the sacrifice that God gave so that they could be restored to Him. Like, if you don't spend your days on the things above, everything else gets burned up. You only have so much opportunity. You can do anything in your life that you want to do, but your calling is to love God and to love others. And you can do that anywhere. All right. I gotta go. I love you like a crazy person. Please pray for me as I pray for you. Pray for my headache. Also, please pray for my family and my loved ones, my parents and my brother and stuff in Florida. As the hurricane makes their way to Florida, please pray for my family. And be good to one another today. Don't forget you're one of the one another's. Don't forget to be good to yourself. I love you. And I mean it, Peanut. Mwah.